Hi, welcome back to my channel. Quick recap. Today, I am going to explain the Simon's Got a Gift movie. That is a romantic fantasy film. Watch out and take care. A story unfolds when an extraordinary orphan, possessing an unusual ability, develops a friendship bond with a boy who comes from a loving and good family. With a desire to be accepted into their family, the orphan discloses his deepest secret. However, fate takes an unexpected turn when a devastating incident occurs. Finally, at a carnival, a man approaches a food stall to purchase some cotton candy. Although the vendor initially stated that he was closing, he ultimately complied with the imploring man's request. The man watched in amazement as the vendor made the cotton candy. The young man consumed the cotton candy and then covertly entered an orphanage where he removed his clothes and put on children's pajamas. He returned to bed silently and transformed himself into a boy called Simon. After a while, the person in charge of the orphanage, Madame Gautran, welcomed a driver and informed them that the children were prepared to go to the town. As the orphans play and run around the house, Simon straightens his shirt, eagerly anticipating being adopted soon. Unfortunately, Kevin, a bully among the orphans, insults Simon, calling him ugly, so he gets a rebuke from the educator in charge. Later in the day, the educator supervises the children at a festival in town and helps them board a ship that is docked nearby. Simon separates from the group and sneaks into the engine room, hiding himself. To Simon's surprise, a girl named Madeline catches him off guard with her gaze from across the room. Suddenly, Madeline's brother Thomas enters through a hatch with cake and a bottle of wine, intending to indulge themselves. Thomas notices Simon's curious gaze and offers to share their food with him. As they share the wine, Simon confides in them that he was abandoned at the orphanage as a baby. Feeling sympathy for Simon's tough life as an orphan, Thomas pretends to have a potato allergy and avoids eating fries. At a later time, Simon becomes more at ease with Thomas and Madeline and decides to sneak a plate of bread to share with them under the table. However, their peaceful moment is interrupted when they hear the voices of Madeline and Thomas's parents calling for them. Out of nowhere, someone reaches under the table and seizes Madeline. Startled, Thomas tries to make a run. Simon feels disheartened as he watches his newfound friends, Madeline and Thomas, laugh and play with their parents, Jacques and Agnes Durant. Simon longs for a family of his own, but he knows it's unlikely to happen. Days later, Madame Gautran informs Simon that Jacques' son has invited him to spend the weekend at their house. Simon is thrilled to receive the invitation and happily returns to his room after acceptance. On the weekend, Jacques arrives to collect Simon and drives him to their house, where Thomas excitedly greets him. The elated orphan helps to set the table and joins the family for dinner. Later that night, Simon looks through Madeline's door and observes Agnes assisting her daughter with a nasal cannula to help her breathe. After seeing this, Simon feels the pain of loneliness and silently withdraws to Thomas's room. Thomas eagerly shares his collection of astronaut books with Simon, but their loving parents soon tuck them both into bed. However, the lively pair secretly turn on their flashlights to continue their fun in the dark. The following day, Jacques enters the dining room carrying Thomas's birthday cake. The young celebrant excitedly blows out the candles, and they all enjoy a wonderful celebration. Simon and Madeline laugh and join in as Thomas blows out his birthday candles. After playing a game of charades, the boys start a pillow fight with Jacques. Madeline hands Simon the heaviest pillow, helping the blast attack on her father. Later that night, the group builds a fort in Thomas's room, and he secretly sneaks out a pocket knife. Thomas invites Simon to become blood brothers for life by mixing their blood and sharing their biggest secrets. Simon eagerly agrees, determined to be part of their family. They each cut their palms and mix their blood on a glass ashtray. After covering their wounds with a bandage, Thomas reveals his secret. He once saw his mother without any cloth. Madeline expresses her sadness about not having any friends, but her brother Thomas insists that she does. He then challenges everyone to share a secret. Madeline reveals that her parents say she won't live past 20 years old. Next, Simon is hesitant to share his secret, but Madeline encourages him to do so. He makes the boys promise to stay blood brothers no matter what. The three affirm their bond, and Madeline says they will always be her friends. Simon amazes Thomas and Madeline by transforming his appearance to that of another boy and then changing back, causing the siblings to stare at him in awe. Thomas requests that Simon change into another person's appearance, which Simon does, but he clarifies that he can only convert in someone's looks if he has touched them. Simon demonstrated his ability to change his appearance and healed his wound, which made him question if he was immortal. Madeline insisted that Simon retain his scar to prove their blood brotherhood. After spending some time amusing each other, they all went to bed. Later that night, Simon heard heavy breathing coming from Madeline's room. As he enters the room, he finds Madeline struggling to catch her breath and calm down. Simon becomes curious about her pain and accepts her outstretched hand, transforming into her. Instantly, he feels the same intense pain in his chest and struggles to breathe. Madeline advises him to wait until it subsides, and eventually, Simon returns to his original form, realizing that they share the same ailment. The next day, Madeline surprises Simon with a pink raincoat that her mother bought for him. They sit in silence for a while until Madeline surprises Simon by kissing him on the cheek. Just then, Thomas interrupts their moment, irritated by the color of their matching raincoats. As they venture into the forest, while exploring the woods, Thomas hands over his pocket knife to Simon, suggesting that he can use it to dig an escape route from the orphanage. Thomas placed a branch on the path to mark the starting line, and then he took off running. Simon, who was small and not as athletic, fell behind, but he then transformed into a more athletic person and passed Thomas. As they continue their run, Thomas suddenly calls out to Simon to stop, but loses his footing and tumbles into a deep ravine. Hearing his friend's cry, Simon frantically searches for him and eventually stumbles upon the cliff. Meanwhile, Jacques leads a search party into the woods to find the two missing boys, with most of the group focused on finding Thomas. At the same time, Agnes stays home and consoles her daughter, equally concerned for the boys' safety. Simon witnesses the family's sorrowful state from outside the window and decides to return as Thomas, deliberately renewing his disappeared blood-packed wound. With a racing heart, Simon approaches the door, and Agnes opens it, greeting him with a warm embrace that he hesitantly returns. Later on, Madeline observes as Thomas is questioned by the police, pretending to be her brother. Fake Thomas retells the story of the accident, causing Madame Gautran to worry and inquire about Simon's whereabouts. Simon, feeling uneasy about the search for Thomas's body, confesses to Agnes that they got lost and he let his friend rest. Later that night, Simon goes to his new room and is followed by Madeline, who seems suspicious of his true identity. Madeline becomes suspicious of Simon's identity and checks his packed wound, leading her to believe that Simon has disappeared. After a fruitless search, the Durants and orphanage workers gather around an empty grave, and Madeline grieves for her childhood love. Years later, Madeline is much older and being advised by Dr. Badet on what not to eat, but she stubbornly refuses to listen. The concerned physician warns Madeline about taking care of her health as there are many patients waiting for a heart transplant ahead of her. Despite his advice, Madeline leaves the hospital in distress. Outside, Jacques, her adoptive father, is cleaning his car when a woman arrives to pick up her order from his mirror shop. She asks for Thomas by name. When the customer in the mirror shop asked about Thomas's vacation plans, the shy young man declined, stating that he would continue working. Later on, Thomas had a birthday celebration with his family and friends, where he received several gifts. Jacques then presented him with a present containing a mirrored plaque with their names, indicating that he would be handing over the shop to Thomas. As Thomas stands outside, he stares at the scar on his palm, lost in thought about the shop he has been given. He feels despondent, thinking about the real Thomas and the life he could have had. Suddenly, Madeline arrives on her boyfriend's motorbike. She notices her brother's loneliness and walks up to him. Madeline learns from Thomas that their father has already revealed his plan. After Madeline asks Thomas what he wants to do with his life, he admits he doesn't know. Madeline then embraces him in comfort. Later that evening, Jacques invites their guests to join in their tradition of teasing the birthday celebrant with old photos. As they narrate the stories behind each picture in a slideshow, a photo of young Simon suddenly appears on the screen, shocking everyone. Later that evening, Thomas gazes at his reflection in his bedroom mirror and transforms into his true identity as an adult Simon for the first time. The next day, while out and about, Thomas notices a telescope in a shop window and decides to go inside to take a closer look. However, upon entering the shop, he is startled by the sight of the blonde woman inside. Simon feels uncertain about approaching the blonde woman and decides to change back into his own appearance before purchasing the telescope. He then indulges in a plate of fries, which he had been avoiding due to his impersonation of someone allergic to potatoes. While enjoying his meal, Simon spots Madeline staring at him from outside the window, and she immediately recognizes him. Feeling uneasy, Simon quickly averts his gaze, hoping that Madeline won't recognize him. He returns home as Thomas and hastily changes his shirt when Madeline unexpectedly knocks on his door. Despite his reluctance, Madeline insists that Simon is still alive and shows Thomas a stolen photo of Simon at the cafe on her phone. Thomas cannot bear to look at the photo and denies Madeline's claims, stating that Simon is deceased. Madeline leaves Simon's room in frustration, not realizing she was actually talking to the real Simon. The next day, Simon comes across a missing person poster with his photo on it that Madeline has been handing out to people. Determined to stop Madeline's search, Simon decides to change back into his original appearance and goes to buy new clothes. Simon intentionally goes into the cafe where he was spotted before and finds Madeline waiting there. Once he gets her attention, he takes a seat. As expected, Madeline comes over and asks him if he is Simon. However, Simon denies it calmly, but Madeline doesn't believe him. He then tells her that her doubt disappoints him. Madeline is surprised and backs away, apologizing for bothering him. However, she soon experiences shortness of breath and Simon rushes to her aid, leading her outside for fresh air. After a while, Madeline asks for his name and Simon responds with a false name, Michelle. Then, the waitress delivers Michelle's fries and offers to assist Madeline, but she declines. Michelle's lack of concern about Madeline's distress frustrates her, so he asserts that he's simply uninterested while he munches on his fries. As he gazes at Madeline, Michelle compliments her on her beauty. During the tense silence, Madeline receives a message from her parents, and Michelle receives one too, which he quickly responds to. As Madeline prepares to leave, she writes her phone number on the paper plate, indicating her interest in Michelle. At dinner, Thomas observes Madeline anxiously, anticipating a text from Michelle, not knowing that she's just a few feet away from him. To conceal his true identity, Thomas purchases a new phone for Michelle to use. Eventually, they arrange a meeting on the beach, and Madeline reveals her secret hideout in a nearby cave. Michelle is captivated by her beauty, and they share a passionate kiss that Madeline returns fervently. On their second date, Michelle follows Madeline through the woods to her house and into her room. Though Michelle is unusually quiet, Madeline begins to reveal her secrets, explaining that her days are numbered, and kisses again. They share an intimate afternoon together, but when Michelle hears the Durants arrive, he quickly dresses to leave. However, Madeline says him on introducing him to her parents. As Michelle meets Jacques and Agnes downstairs, he tries to hide his true identity from them, even though they have known him as Thomas for years. But when Michelle looks at Jacques, he sees a flicker of recognition in his eyes. One evening, while sitting around a bonfire in the woods, Madeline confides in Thomas, who is Simon, that she has strong feelings for Michelle. Madeline reveals to Thomas that she wants to live a long life and experience things beyond her illness, which emotionally affects Thomas. Madeline then notices that Thomas is looking at her the same way Michelle does, which causes her to feel uncomfortable and retreat to her bed. The next day, Madeline searches through her brother's belongings in hopes of finding the same shirt that Michelle was wearing in the missing persons poster. Michelle arrives at the cafe and waits for Madeline, but she doesn't show up. Suspecting something is amiss, he leaves to retrieve Thomas's clothes from a backpack hidden in the woods. Unbeknownst to Simon, Madeline sees him transform from Michelle to Thomas, confirming her worst fear. Madeline confronts Thomas in his room, telling him she knows his secret and calling him by his real name, Simon. Simon is deeply upset by Madeline's words and suddenly transforms into his true form, leaving Madeline devastated and crying out in pain. After Madeline recovers, she asks Simon about her real brother's whereabouts. Simon takes her to the deep ravine where Thomas died, and she demands that he tells her parents the truth. However, Simon suggests that he should run away instead of revealing the truth to Jacques and Agnes so they won't suffer from his deception. Furious, Madeline berates Simon, accusing him of being a coward and claiming that her parents don't care about him. She vows to find another way to expose his true identity. Simon, in tears, expresses his love for Madeline as she walks away. At Madeline's urging, Commissioner Leroy and the police seal off the ravine to search for Thomas's remains. Afterward, the police officer interrogates Thomas in her office, presenting him with a photo of the raincoat and inquiring about Simon's whereabouts. The urn containing the boy's remains is interred in the grave that was previously empty, which finally provides closure to the family. Madeline, who knows the truth, silently sheds tears and gives a sharp look at Thomas, who quickly makes an excuse and leaves. Feeling trapped, Thomas starts to pack his belongings, intending to escape, but is interrupted when the Durants arrive home. He tells them he's been feeling suffocated at home, and Jacques and Agnes attempt to comfort him. However, Madeline enters the room and aims a shotgun at Thomas, firing a warning shot at the ceiling to show her determination. Frustrated and desperate, she demands that Thomas reveals his true identity. In a moment of panic, Madeline shoots Thomas in the stomach, causing Jacques to take the gun from her and Agnes to call for an ambulance. Madeline desperately pleads with Thomas to transform and save himself, while Thomas confesses his sadness and love for the Durants before returning to his original form as Simon. As Jacques and Agnes stand in stunned silence, Madeline reveals the truth. Simon has been posing as Thomas, whom they buried earlier. When Simon prepares to leave, Jacques accuses him of causing his son's death. Simon denies the accusation and calls Jacques father, but the older man reacts with anger and throws him to the ground. Eventually, as the police arrive, Jacques strangles Simon outside in tears. Simon, in an attempt to escape, transforms into Thomas, leaving Jacques and the onlookers shocked. Commissioner Leroy attempts to stop Simon, but he quickly gets into the police car and drives away, leaving Madeline in agony. Soon after, the police catch up with Simon in town, but he manages to flee on foot. As they chase him through a crowded area, Commissioner Leroy spots a discarded shirt stained with blood, suggesting that Simon has transformed into a new identity. A month passes, and Madeline notices a police officer watching them from a distance, suspecting it might be Simon keeping tabs on them. Suddenly, Madeline notices an elderly man staring at her with a look of sadness. Realizing that it's Simon, she starts to approach him but is called back by Agnes. As she returns to her mother, Madeline accidentally drops her cane and runs towards Simon, embracing him tightly and kissing him passionately. She declares her love for him, no matter his appearance or identity. Fearing they are being observed by the police, Madeline urges Simon to escape with her. However, as they are running, Madeline's health deteriorates, causing her to fall to the ground. Agnes catches up to them, and Simon attempts to carry Madeline but fails. He quickly transforms into Jacques in front of the crowd and rushes to the car. They arrive at the hospital, and Dr. Badet swiftly takes her to the emergency ward. Shortly after, a group of police led by Commissioner Leroy arrive at the hospital to search for Simon, checking everyone's identity one by one. As Simon waits anxiously for news, the real Jacques shows up and warns Agnes about the police presence. At the same time, Simon transforms into an old man, prompting Agnes to tell her husband that Simon had helped her and that their priority is Madeline's surgery. When Dr. Badet returns, he informs the Durants that Madeline requires urgent surgery and that she is still on the transplant list. Unfortunately, Jacques Hart is not a suitable match for Madeline's transplant, leaving the family devastated. The doctor advises them to say their goodbyes, and Simon silently mourns with them. Later, Simon spots police officers approaching and leaves to take on the face of a physician. He sneaks into a storage room and steals some medication before putting on a coat. However, Officer Dennis stops him and demands to see his ID. The real physician sees the commotion and Simon runs away to evade capture. Dennis scours the hospital looking for Simon while Commissioner Leroy demands the stamp. Dennis becomes suspicious of the commissioner, so he contacts the real Leroy, recognizing that the person in front of him is Simon. Suddenly, Simon knocks Dennis unconscious, changes his appearance to look like Dennis, and steals his belongings, now wearing the face of Leroy, and convinces the guards to let him enter Madeline's room. After informing Jacques and Agnes that all exits are blocked, she hints that Simon won't be able to escape and requests a private moment with Madeline. Once Jacques and Agnes realize the woman is actually Simon, they exit the room, leaving Simon alone with their gravely ill daughter. Soon after, the guards are stunned to find themselves face to face with the real Leroy. As the officer enters the room, she discovers Simon lying motionless on the bed, with Madeline's lifeless body cradled in his arms. After finding evidence that Simon had taken a lethal substance, Leroy discovers a note written on Simon's hand, requesting that they save Madeline's life. In honor of his last wish, Simon's heart is transplanted into Madeline's body. Shortly after, the Durants mourn at the cemetery, where they place the urns of the two young men under their respective names, officially acknowledging Simon Durant's identity. As the media swarm around the family, Madeline slips away, beginning her new life with her lover's heart beating in her chest. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit the like button if you enjoy, and please check out our other recaps.